Hello and welcome to Minerals, Rocks, and Fossil Talks. I'm your paleo teacher, Jen, and it's time for Monday Musings. So the Permian period was a time of change. The lush, wet Carboniferous spore forests were being replaced by seed-bearing gymnosperms that could withstand less water as things were drying out. Arthropods began to diversify, more as true bugs, cicadas, and beetles evolved. Coastal waters were booming with sponges, corals, ammonites, brachiopods, and true bony fish. But the animals that truly came to take over the Permian period were the synapsids, our ancestors and distant cousins. The most primitive synapsids were the pelycosaurs. While not a formal name, because it doesn't include their therapsid descendants, it is still a useful tool in recognizing early synapsids. So pelycosaurs appear to lack epidermal scales, like reptiles, and were instead covered in naked glandular skin, like naked mole rats or humans, us. That is what this is. Some appear to have belly scutes like crocodiles, and osteoderms also like crocodiles. So these are like bony pieces embedded in the skin. So that's kind of interesting. The pelycosaurs that you guys would probably be most familiar with would be those with scales, such as the herbivorous Edaphosaurus and the carnivorous Dimetrodon. Casids, like Codolorhynchus, which we talked about last Thursday, were also pelycosaurs. These were the first mega herbivores with tiny heads and huge guts for digesting tough plant matter. Soon, though, these basal groups would be replaced by the far more successful therapsids. We are therapsids, very, very derived therapsids, but we're in that group. Therapsids are identified through several characteristics. They had 3 types of teeth: incisors, canines, and then postcanines. They had a more upright position. Most of these were semi-erect, but obviously further on down the line, we get to our erect posture. They had a pineal foramen. So it's this little hole on the top of the skull, a third eye, if you will, that would have helped with thermal regulation and a few other things, but it's lost in derived forms, including us. We don't need it because we are not cold-blooded. They would have had glandular skin and laid soft, leathery eggs, more than likely. Mostly because we haven't found a whole lot of eggs for things this old. We did recently find eggs for Lystrosaurus, which is super cool. So early therapsids consisted of groups like Dinocephalians, a clade with thickened skulls with many knobs and bony projections. They became both mega herbivores like moss chops and apex predators like Ankylosaurus here. You'll notice huge heads, lots of bony knobs and projections. It's even thought that moss chops might have done some headbutting like sheep. Another clade in the therapsids were the Gorgonopsids. These animals were the first saber-toothed vertebrates like Gorgonops, which was probably the most famous, and they would have been formidable predators. Dicynodonts are yet another group of herbivorous synapsids from the Permian. The dicynodont skull is highly specialized, light but strong, with the synapsid temporal openings at the rear of the skull, greatly enlarged to accommodate larger jaw muscles. The front of the skull and the lower jaw are generally narrow, and in all but a number of primitive forms, toothless. Instead, the front of the mouth was equipped with a keratinous horny beak, not unlike a turtle or a triceratops. They also had a pair of tusks, or tusk-like teeth. We're going to call them tusks to make it simple. And they varied enormously in size, from as small as a rat to as big as an elephant. If you were here in March of last year, you would have heard of the largest dicynodont, Lysoisha, from Poland. However, by far the most famous of this group is Lystrosaurus. Go check out the video I made on these fun little guys. This group would survive the Permian-Triassic mass extinction event. Dicynodonts in a whole, but Lystrosaurus is the one that really shows up on both sides of the mass extinction, which is why I made a video on them, because they're super cool, so go check them out. Last, we have the cynodonts. Along with the dicynodonts, cynodonts survived into the Triassic period. This group would give rise to the true mammals. They had many characteristics in common with Mammalia, including differentiated teeth, a brain case that would bulge the back of the skull. Here's the best I could find, really. You can see that the back of the skull here bulges, and that's where the brain would have been held. They would have had large temporal fenestrae and a wide zygomatic arch. So with this, it's kind of hard to see because it's not a straight through hole, but you see this little, I'm going to use my head. So this section here is actually an opening where that fenestrae would be, and then you can see how wide that zygomatic arch is. Right there, that cheekbone. They would have had a secondary palate and a large dentary. Our jaws are just dentaries in mammals, but these guys would have had mostly dentary with little bits left that would eventually move into our ears and become part of our middle ear. They had some sort of warm-blooded metabolism. We're not entirely sure what, but we're pretty sure they're warm-blooded. And they were possibly covered in fur. We have evidence that they didn't have the stretchy, flexible lips that we do. So they probably didn't have whiskers, because you need these stretchy lips to be able to move those around without damaging the whiskers. But they could have had just a regular covering of fur, which is still pretty cool. Well, thanks for coming to today's lesson, and make sure you tune in tomorrow for some fun synapsid trivia. And I will fossilize you later.